All right, so picking up where we left off, we're going to be continuing the David Ferrie files. And the David Ferrie files are starting to get juicy. And not really for anything related to the assassination, but more for background on David Ferrie and who David Ferrie really was. And when you come to understand who David Ferrie really was, you come to understand that he was a scumbag. Uh-oh. I got sound. All right, so, yes, so what we're going to start with today is this letter from Jack Martin to the Honorable William Bell. Jack Martin continually trying to get David Ferrie jammed up here. The letterhead is on the YMCA Hotel on Wabash Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. Interesting. At this time, Jack Martin appears to be in New Jersey. Saturday, 20th July 1963. So this is before the assassination. A letter to the Honorable William Bell, legal counsel, attorney, Eastern Airlines, Miami International Airport, Miami, Florida. So Jack Martin has gotten himself involved in David Ferrie's Eastern Airlines investigation. Dear Mr. Bell, after my telephone call and your conversation with Monsignor Brown, our friend David Ferrie got wind of the storm brewing. It seems that Archbishop Marchena, who's about to be thrown to the wolves by the clergy of that church in favor of its true primate, Archbishop Cyrus Augustine Starkey, phoned this guy, Bishop Hyde, in Washington and blew the whistle on things. Thus it was that Ferrie never made the scene, as it were. So, just to refer back to the last episode, we talked about Bishop Hyde, who is one of two people mentioned in David Ferrie's will, the other being Alvin Beauboeuf. So those obviously being the two people closest to David Ferrie, Beauboeuf and Bishop Hyde. Hyde, and I think we'll get to this as we go through these documents, Hyde is allegedly a higher up in some Catholic church or hierarchy, but it turns out he might not actually be. So, the implications of that we'll discuss after I go through this. It seems that Archbishop Marchena, who is about to be thrown to the wolves by the clergy of that church in favor of its true primate, Archbishop Cyrus Augustine Starkey, phoned this guy, Bishop Hyde, remember all of these names, in Washington and blew the whistle on things. Thus it was that Ferrie never made the scene, as it were. It seems that Hyde, Marchena, and some other people tried to take this church, the old Roman Catholic Church, over, but it failed. According to the American Yearbook of Churches and other official sources, spelled wrong, the true Archbishop Primate is Most Reverend Cyrus Augustine Starkey, with an address in New Jersey. It seems after my alert to him, Starkey, he sent in the apostolic legate, a Father Mario, who's down there in Kankakee, now straightening things out, but good. The very idea holding I don't know what this word is, synod, S-Y-N-O-D, to kick out the true head of things, the main instigator seems to have been Ferrie, who once offered Starkey $1,000 if he'd ordain him, Hyde, and this nigger Marchena. Now, Grapevine has it that Bishop Hyde, who has valid Orthodox Holy Orders valet line, may still try to again attempt ordination of Ferrie, there where Hyde now lives. He provides an address for Reverend George A. Hyde, 1657 Park Road, Northwest, Washington, 10, D.C. I also have information that Hyde is under observation of the police moral squad, Vice, there in Washington. Moreover, he's being watched by the Evening Star, a newspaper there. If you put the heat to Hyde with some of your bulldog ex-Fed investigators, Hyde will crack. He's weak, and he may turn over some of Ferrie's old letters to you as evidence. This guy, Joseph A. Oster, of Joe Oster and Associates, Audubon Building there in New Orleans, has copies of letters that I once talked Hyde out of, which were written by Ferrie to Hyde, requesting ordination. Since then, Ferrie boosted the The had used the name Jack S. Martin while in New Orleans as well. We know that thanks to the work of Hank Albarelli. So, let me continue. Let me try to read this notation at the bottom of this memo. Remember, this is from Jim Garrison's files. And so at the bottom of this letter, it says, I had a long talk with, looks like, Roby, and I can't read the name, other bunch as I passed through D.C. Okay, so this is just in reference to Garrison having followed up on this. This is the letter, the envelope that the letter was sent in by Jack Martin. Continuing on the other side of the letter, this is kind of minutia that doesn't really mean anything. All right, so now we come across a letter dated April 3rd, 1963, typewritten, handwritten in the upper corner, the name Ferrie. And this is a letter to Mr. W. Glenn Harlan. In the 1931-1963 report from Southern Research Company, there is the following reference. As a result of direct contact by mail, a letter was received from Mr. Vernon D. Anning, American Vice Consul, Naples, Italy, dated December 17th, 1962. The following is quoted from this letter. Quote, according to the information available at the consulate central, the Phoenix University no longer exists. It was formerly operated by a man by the name of Francesco Oroso d'Aragonia, who operated several other, quote, universities in Italy. The institution was not accredited and, according to the Italian authorities, conferred worthless academic titles as well as titles of honor, also of little value. Captain Ferrie has taken the position that he has a Ph.D. and a legitimate one. Therefore, we would appreciate your obtaining the original of this letter. Signed, William G. Bell, Jr. So David Ferrie, who claimed to have a Ph.D. in psychology from Phoenix University. Turns out Phoenix University was a scam, right? But we knew this because he was hanging out with people who were involved in coming up with fake churches and fake organizations. Not a shock there. All right. May 10th, 1961. It says draft record number 34, it appears. Cleveland, Ohio. Gentlemen, I, the undersigned, hereby certify that David William Ferrie is registered as a divinity student at St. Charles Seminary in Cartagena, Ohio. He has a leave of absence to attend Baldwin Wallace College in Ohio until June 10th, 41. So the date at the top was not 61, it was 41. So this is an old letter from 1941 when... Okay, so let me start to put some more dots here together, right? So I'm trying to figure out if David Ferrie was involved with the OSS or the military or intelligence or whatever during the years of 41 to 45. And that's because Ferrie was tied up with the CIA by 47. We know that. But piecing together his life between 41 and 45 could shed a lot of light on who he really was. So here, he had left St. Charles Seminary to attend Baldwin Wallace College. But that is, I believe, where he did graduate from. But, let me see, till June 10th, 41. I don't know if this is like at the end of his college or at the end of a semester, because I don't think, in 41, let me see, he was born in 18, he would have been about 22, 23. So yeah, if he went to high school and then St. Ignatius High School, and then he went to the seminary, and then he went to Baldwin Wallace College, I guess that's about right as far as dates go. So if he did have any involvement with intelligence, it would have to have been after June 10th of 41. All right. So, this is an arrest report dated August 30th, 1961, and it's for Mr. Leighton Martins. This, let me see. Yes, this is for RS-14, Art 107, Section 5 and 7, vagrancy by loitering, pending investigation of burglary, hold for FBI. This is an arrest affidavit for Leighton Martins in regards to the break-in at Houma, Louisiana. That's what this is. So David Ferrie, Sergio Arcacha, Andrew Blackman, Melvin Sealing, which is probably still just a fucking alias at this point, and Leighton Martins, along with Louis Rebell and a couple other people, burglarized the Schlumberger munitions bunker in Houma, Louisiana. It was run by the CIA. The CIA left the door open for them. They cleared it out, and those weapons, which most people will try to tell you made their way to the anti-Castro Cubans because they're stupid. The reality is those fucking weapons that they all stole ended up going through Bannister's office at 544 Camp Street. And then they were sold to a company in Virginia called Inter-Armco, which was it was a CIA front company, of course. Every fucking weapons company in the world is a CIA fucking front company or contractor. So it was a CIA company that took all those fucking weapons and funneled them to the Israelis to fight the Palestinians. Period. That is why the Cubans never had their fucking uprising, right? That is why the Bay of Pigs failed and all that shit, right? So, because none of the fucking weapons and arms and money that was ever meant for the Cubans ever got there because it went to the fucking Israelis. Research Sonborn Institute. So let's scroll through this. The subject and Sealing and Blackman, found in 1961, Plymouth 1961, license TJ78235, parked near shopping center in Lake Vista. The car belongs to Sealing. Leighton Martins is second in command to one Arcacha Smith. White male, 112, Egret, who is conducting a counter-revolution movement in New Orleans against Fidel Castro of Cuba. Also connected with this organization is one Captain David Ferrie, white male, 43, of 331 Atherton Drive, Metairie, Louisiana, who was driven by the three men in Sealing's car to Arcacha Smith's residence at 112 Egret. A short while before being found by the shopping center by officers Lee and Ryan. Captain David Ferrie is wanted for attempted theft of an airplane. All right, so here we have Leighton Martin's fingerprints. When you look at fingerprints, make sure to always count how many fingers there are. It might sound stupid, but go look at Jack Ruby's fingerprints, and then tell me why I'm concerned about that. Looks like August 24th, 1961. Statement of Eric Michael Crochet, white male, age 16, residing 5505 Murray Street, relative to an investigation of witness intimidation. All right, so this is in reference to the Al Shermy case, if I'm not mistaken, and the fact that David Ferrie, Sergio Arcacha, and Andrew Blackman attempted to intimidate Eric Crochet, who was a witness to all this. Ferrie would eventually be charged for this tampering of a witness. But of course, like I've talked about already, all of his charges disappear. It says, my name is Eric Crochet, and I, without threats or promises, make the following statements and will answer all questions asked of me. I'm assuming this is not necessarily deposition, but at least a standardized interview. It was transcribed, so it must have been at the station. Can you explain what occurred while you were at work yesterday? It was about 2:15 p.m., August 23rd, 1961. I was bringing some stock to the front of the store where I work, and I saw Captain Ferrie come walk to the cigarette counter. Captain Ferrie came up to me and asked if I could bail him out. He told me at first, you know, you got me in trouble. I told him I didn't know. He told me that he had seen his lawyer and that there was a way out without anybody getting hurt. I answered, yeah, me disappear. And he said that this could be arranged. I was working with Mr. Francis Puglia on the displays, and Mr. Ferrie told me that he wanted me to meet this fellow who was with him. Ferrie introduced this man as the Cuban who was supposed to go with me to Miami. He told me the man's name, but I didn't remember it. I went to throw away some trash, and when I came back, Captain Ferrie was waiting in aisle number 9 of the store. Captain Ferrie had a slip of paper, which was typed out. Captain Ferrie wanted me to sign this paper, saying that everything I had said to the police was made out of anger toward him. Captain Ferrie told me if I signed the slip of paper, I could name my ticket and get anything I wanted. Captain Ferrie told me that if I didn't sign the paper, I was going to have a bunch of Cubans after me. I signed the paper, and I remember seeing my name typed in it. I signed it because I was afraid. Captain Ferrie and this other man were in the store about 45 minutes from 2:15 to 3 p.m. Captain Ferrie talked to me about 15 or 20 minutes of this time. About 5 minutes after 3 p.m., I was going to the liquor store, and I saw another man sitting in a green 1960 Ford parked on, looks like Gaffin Avell, at the side of Grun's drugstore. It looked like the captain's car. I didn't see Captain Ferrie anymore till after 5 p.m. when I knocked off. I went straight home and changed clothes and came back to the store and got some cigarettes. I noticed Captain Ferrie parked in his car on the side of Grun's drugstore, and he was calling me over. Ferrie was sitting in the car with the same person who was in the store earlier with him. There was another guy in the car who looked like the one I saw earlier during the day. That's Sergei Arkacha. David Ferrie asked me what I wanted from the Cubans, and I said that I don't know. He asked me a second time. I asked him if a motorcycle was too much, and he said no. He told me that he would contact me again. He told me that he would like to take me down to meet Mr. Arkacha Smith on Thursday, but I told him that I had to work today. He told me that he had to go pick up some things at the Seltzer building and had to rush. When he wanted me to sign the paper, he told me that I was holding up his M1s and bazookas. Ferrie told me that one of the Cubans with him was a paratrooper that jumped in the first invasion of Cuba. He's then asked, can you describe the car? Can you describe the man who was with Ferrie in the store? He was tall, he was dark complected, and he had short cut hair. He had blue jeans on, and he was husky. Could you identify this man if you saw him again? Yes, I could. Did you hear this man speak? Yes, I don't remember if he had an accent. Did you hear the captain talk to this man? Yes, he spoke in English to him. Can you describe the boy in the car? He was about 20 years old. He had blonde hair and was about 5'11" or 6 foot tall. He had a fatigue cap on. I'm assuming like an army fatigue cap on. He was wearing gray pants and a t-shirt, a gray vest, a long sleeve vest with 4 buttons on the bottom. He spoke with an accent, but I didn't identify the accent. He said that he had been there about 2 weeks. How do you know what time it was when Captain came to see you at the store? I looked at the clock and it was about 2:15 p.m. Did you tell anyone that Ferrie came to see you? I went to Al Landry's house and told him that Ferrie came to see me at the store. Mr. Landry wanted to take me to the juvenile bureau. I told him that I would rather wait until tomorrow. I also told my mother about it, and she told me call the police. I told Mr. Landry to call the police. Is this statement true and correct to the best of your knowledge? Yes. Signed, Eric Michael Crochet. So yeah, this is in reference to... So there's so many fucking Al's in this. There's Al Bobouf, Al Landry, Al Cherami. But Eric Crochet was a witness to, or a second, he was told by the victim of David Ferrie that he got molested by him. All right, so this here appears to be another arrest affidavit. Is this for Ferrie? I believe it is. So let me read this. On Thursday morning, August 24th, 1961, investigating officers received a phone call from Mr. Alexander Landry, who stated that juvenile Michael Cruchet had come to his residence on the night of Wednesday, August 23rd, 1961, and told of being contacted by David Ferrie. The boy told Mr. Landry that Ferrie was trying to get Cruchet to drop the charges. Investigating officers immediately contacted Michael Cruchet and his employers by phone. Cruchet stated that Ferrie came to the store where he is employed at 5523 St. Claude Avenue at 2:15 p.m. August 23rd, 1961. According to Cruchet, Ferrie was with another person whom he introduced as a Cuban who had jumped in the recent invasion of Cuba. Ferrie, as Cruchet stated, asked him to sign a paper stating that he, Cruchet, had made the statement to the police out of anger for Captain Ferrie. Cruchet also said that Ferrie told him that he would have to sign the paper or be dealt with by some Cubans. Cruchet told investigating officers that he signed the paper shown to him by Ferrie because he was afraid. Cruchet said that he also told his parents about Ferrie's visit to the store after he knocked off from work, and later that night he went to see Mr. Alexander Landry about it. Cruchet stated that he asked Mr. Landry to notify investigating officers. On August 24th, 1961, investigating officers went to Puglia Supermarket, where Cruchet is employed, and a full typewritten statement was taken from him relative to the visit by Ferrie. This statement will better explain the occurrence, which also describes the subject with Ferrie and another who was sitting outside the store in Ferrie's car. Cruchet thought that one of the unknown subjects was known by the name of Andrew. Cruchet stated that it's Andrew Blackman. Cruchet stated that Ferrie stayed in the store from about 2:15 until 3 p.m. and later, when Cruchet knocked off, Ferrie was waiting outside in his car. Investigating officers spoke with Mr. George Puglia Jr., owner of the grocery store, and he stated that after lunch at approximately 2:30 p.m., he noticed two men speaking with Cruchet in the store. Mr. Puglia identified one of the subjects as having painted eyebrows and was losing his hair, which very well fits David Ferrie. Well, this is pretty important here, because he's saying that, this is in August of 61, when David Ferrie had already been painting on his eyebrows and was losing his hair, right? So, because there are pictures of David Ferrie from 62 and 63 with a full head of hair. What does that tell me? It tells me those pictures are dated wrong. Very important. Putting together the timeline on when Ferrie lost his hair is crucial, because I am of the belief, based on multiple references in the Garrison files, that allude to the fact that David Ferrie was a U-2 pilot. And I know, what's a big deal about being a U-2 pilot? Like, why would he fucking lose his hair because he was a U-2 pilot? Well, because the fucking early days of the U-2 pilot, when they were experimenting with pressurization in the suits, you will find that many of the very early U-2 test pilots lost all their fucking hair, couldn't grow it back, just like David Ferrie. David Ferrie was a man who fucking was most likely blackmailed into working for the CIA since the beginning, because he was gay and a pedophile. And used, manipulated, and abandoned by them, leading to his death about 20 years after he began working with the CIA. So, interesting stuff. So yeah, this is the arrest affidavit, probably of David Ferrie, for attempting to coerce a witness. I'm going to skip over most of this because that really doesn't have much relevance to the assassination. It's more character background on David Ferrie, and we all know he's a pedophile, right? So, all right, this is probably going to get good. Testimony of Guy Bannister by Mr. Gill. That's G. Ray Gill, infamous mob attorney. This is from the Eastern Airlines investigation files. What is your name? Guy Bannister. Where do you reside? 7059 Argonne in New Orleans, Louisiana. What is your profession? I am an investigator and a criminologist. Have you had any special training in these fields? Yes, I've attended numerous FBI schools and other courses. I have been on the faculty of several universities. Have you ever been a member of the FBI? Yes, I was a special agent in charge. What is a special agent in charge? A special agent in charge bears the relationship to other agents as a general to his private soldiers. Are you acquainted with Captain Ferrie? Yes, I am. How did you first become acquainted with Captain Ferrie? I was retained first by him and then by others to investigate the criminal charges made against him. Later, I was to investigate the charges made by Eastern Airlines. Would you please enumerate the charges from whatever source that you investigated? First, I investigated the criminal charges. I reviewed the files of the district attorney. I found they had no case and so informed them. I found that Eric Crochet was not a stable individual, and he was the type who would frighten easily under those circumstances, do anything he was told. I have spoken with him on numerous occasions. He insists the charges of crimes against nature are false. So Guy Bannister's in on the witness intimidation. I further learned that the instigator of these charges was something previously who had charged a YMCA supervisor in some matter. Then she allegedly broke up a Boy Scout troop. As far as I can find out, next in line was Captain Ferrie. Now, strangely enough, the name Mrs. Landry appears in the charges against one John Cater. All right, and this is underlined. So Jim Garrison found this to be very relevant. Behind Mrs. Landry, there was most certainly the influence of communism. The tactic of the communists is the big smear and the attempt to place a moral turpitude label on those they wish to get. The district attorney who kicked these matters off is no longer in office. However, he and his executive assistant have held numerous memberships in organizations identified by the Congress as communist fronts. You see, by accident, Captain Ferrie stumbled onto something big the communists were doing in this port city of New Orleans. In his patriotism, he meant to stop it. These charges resulted. So, hilarious. I also went into the matter of the so-called intimidation of a witness charge and the extortion charge. Crochet and Cater, the two state witnesses, claim this never happened. Both persons insist that no such acts occurred, no such crimes were committed, and that they made no such charges. Likewise, I went into Eastern's charges that Captain Ferrie made false statements in his employment application. These allegations proved utterly absurd. I found no employment at Rocky River High School as charged. I found Ferrie left the seminary over a theological disagreement. I found no evidence of mental or emotional problems. The charges of an unauthorized CAP unit were ridiculous. There was never such an organization as the Omnipotence. Someone simply fabricated this. Ferrie's abilities as a research psychologist are generally recognized. I could find no connection, as Eastern calls it, between Ferrie and the so-called Cherami case, which was never a case at all. Never a case at all that led to like 6 charges, right? I found out that Ferrie did have a connection with the Landry case, and that was in getting Landry to return home. Ferrie is a member of the Catholic Church in good standing and has never been excommunicated. The American Medical Association never heard of him, much less warned him to stop practicing medicine. He did, contrary with Eastern's report, deliver a speech before the something and was well received. Have you found any evidence of moral turpitude in Captain Ferrie? No, after the most exhaustive search. Have other persons been interviewed in connection with this case in regards to moral turpitude? Yes. Kindly enumerate them and tell what you learned. And here, I'm not going to read this list, but Bannister reads off a list of about 15, 20 people who will all testify, allegedly, to his lack of moral turpitude. And it says, and every one of these persons interviewed regarded Captain Ferrie as just, honest, trustworthy, highly moral, religious, and in general a credit to himself, his community, his airline, and his profession. The list could go on and on. It is only a partial list of those interviewed. Some of these names should be withheld at this time in case the matter goes to federal courts. Is there any labor problem involved in this case? Certain information suggests this is possible. It seems that Eastern Airlines and American Airlines have been attempting a merger. American is allegedly sponsoring an Allied Pilots Association in an attempt to break ALPA on American. Reports indicate that similar moves are underway on Eastern, looking forward toward the merger. In this case, it is reported Eastern is attempting to introduce a moral turpitude standard whereby a precedent will be set. If they win this case, then the door is open to fire pilots almost at will. A traffic violation will then become a moral turpitude. For you see, the president in this case is an attempt to establish the principle that what a pilot does on his own time off the company property is the company's business. Reports indicate that in Captain Ferrie's case, if the company successfully discharged him, a precedent will be established, then the company can fire a man who gets a traffic ticket. There's nothing to stop them. This is hilarious. Fucking hilarious. This is like what lawyers do. This is Guy Bannister completely twisting the facts to defend David Ferrie. It goes to show you that how close Bannister and Ferrie were, considering Bannister must have known all of David Ferrie's weaknesses, as he put it. Would you supply proofs of what you've just said? At this time, I feel that it would be against Captain Ferrie's best interest to reveal the sources of my information. Certain reports about Eastern's tactics in this case suggest considerable caution and discretion in revealing information. Have you investigated the matter of Eastern's standard of conduct, which it expects of its employees? Yes, I have. Would you outline or describe that so-called standard of conduct? That is very difficult to do. Nowhere can I find that Eastern has ever established a standard of conduct. There are no publications showing this. There are no contractual provisions to show it. However, if you consider what Eastern seems to condone in its personnel, then such a standard might be inferred. Would you outline the conduct that Eastern seems to condone, as you say? It would be very unwise and perhaps unnecessary to do this, since it might be dragging other people's lives into the open when that might not have to be done. So I'm not going to go through much more of, or any more of, Guy Bannister's statement here, because all it is doing is showing us who Guy Bannister is, right? So who's Guy Bannister? Guy Bannister ran 544 Camp Street, former FBI, former Naval Intelligence, but once ONI, always ONI. So, and he was definitely working with the CIA. He had connections to fucking the ADL. He had connections to Schlumberger. So Guy Bannister was directly involved in the recovery of the USS Thresher. So, in case you're not familiar with the Thresher and the Scorpion, those are two nuclear submarines of ours that were scuttled. They were sabotaged, ultimately by the fucking Israelis. Now, you're not going to find that in any history book. The history books will tell you that they just sunk. Yeah, we got two of the most advanced nuclear subs in the world, cutting-edge technology, and both of them just sunk. I don't think so. Guy Bannister coordinated with Schlumberger Corporation, Well Drilling Corporation, to attempt recovery of the Thresher, right? So basically the Thresher is sabotaged, it sinks, and then Guy Bannister connects Schlumberger, who is run by whom? Jean de Menil, who sits on the board of Permindex with Clay Shaw, right? So a big network here of Israeli interests that connect to the assassination and are overwhelmingly blatant, if you ask me, when you study the recovery of the Thresher. So that's who Guy Bannister is. Shitbag. What is this? More stuff on Eastern Airlines. You know, I'm not going to go into the Eastern Airlines stuff too much because really, at the end of the day, he gets fired from Eastern Airlines because he was a fucking pervert and he was involved in all the witness tampering that we just talked about and all that stuff, right? So ultimately, that just goes to character development of Ferrie, right? All right, looks like we have something else here from Jack S. Martin. Jack Martin really had it out for David Ferrie. He didn't like him one bit. Constantly throwing him under the bus. This is another letter to William Bell. Again, Jack Martin attempting to get David Ferrie jammed up. This is barely legible. And sometimes when I see stuff like this is barely legible, I wonder if it's intentionally barely legible. Okay, so I'll read this. This seems to be a response. Actually, it's a letter from Jim Garrison to William Bell in regards to David Ferrie. And it says, in response to your request of November 7, 1962, I've ascertained the status of the case pending against David William Ferrie. In case number 171957, Section H, Ferrie is charged with public intimidation of a state witness in a case pending against Ferrie. In that case, Ferrie was arraigned on September 26, 1961. However, the case was never sent to trial. On November 5, 1962, the complaining witness made an affidavit requesting the charges be dismissed. This office has not yet made a decision with regard to that affidavit. In case number 173891, Ferrie is charged with extortion. On March 13, 1962, the defendant was arraigned. On March 5, 1962, complaining witness made an affidavit he did not wish to prosecute the defendant. This office has not yet made a decision in regards to that affidavit. So yeah, this is Jim Garrison discussing the David Ferrie case involving L. Landry and L. Shermy and Eric Cruchet. So what does that let you know about Jim Garrison? It lets you know about Jim Garrison that he was well aware of David Ferrie and David Ferrie's proclivities long before the assassination. His office, if not him directly, most likely just his office, would have known all of Ferrie's associates at that time. That would include Andrew Blackman and Bo Boof and Leighton Martins and all those guys. But the funny thing is, when you get into Garrison's investigation of the relationship between David Ferrie and Lee Harvey Oswald, which allegedly was supposed to be everywhere because people were seeing them together and all this stuff, right? When he started that, he could never seem to place Oswald anywhere around David Ferrie. But whom did he place around David Ferrie? Kerry Thornley, the man who impersonated Oswald all over New Orleans. So, here we have another letter, or internal memo, one or the other, in regards to George Hyde. Okay, so George Hyde, I'm pretty sure I've already said this, but George Hyde was a fake fucking priest involved in a fake fucking church. And he was one of Ferrie's closest associates, and he was connected to the Civil Air Patrol as well. So, if you haven't put two and two together yet, the Civil Air Patrol, which involved taking young boys and putting them on airplanes and flying them around, by David Ferrie. David Ferrie now gets connected to this fake fucking priest in a fake church. Hello, can you put two and two together here yet? David Ferrie and this guy Hyde were obviously involved in a child trafficking ring. Right? But you'll never hear that in any fucking Kennedy investigation research, ever. Alright, so the big question that Jim Garrison had around this guy was whether or not he was a real priest, right? And I think in this, I'll go ahead and I'll read this because it'll show that he wasn't. And this will just bolster the idea that he was involved in this child trafficking ring. Bishop George A. Hyde was located at 1657 Park Road, Northwest Washington, D.C., where he advised he's lived for the past 3 or 4 months. He stated there is no parish of the Orthodox Catholic Church in the District of Columbia, that he serves the Washington, Southern Maryland, and Northern Virginia areas. He advised his present address serves as a study house and a place of abode for his postulates and novitiates. He presently has 3 young men at his address, expects one more on August 3rd, 1963, another on August 15th, 1963, and a total of 6 or 7 for the 1963 fall term. So this fucking priest, who's a fake priest with a fake church, has a bunch of kids staying at his fucking house, and he was friends with David Ferrie. Wonder what was going on there. Each person holds an outside job and turns all of his money over to a common fund to run the house. Religious studies are usually conducted in the evening, and he has one member he hopes to enroll in the American University for the 1963 fall term. Bishop Hyde admits he had not registered in the District of Columbia, and he is not legally empowered to perform marriages, but stated he does not consider it to be necessary inasmuch as he does not have a parish. When queried as to conducting funerals, he stated he has conducted funerals and some marriages in New York State area, However, when asked to the last funeral he conducted, he was very evasive as to where and when, and finally said he conducted funerals for one of the family members of his study who had died in mid-July. When queried as to where this funeral and interment took place, he stated he did not desire nor would he furnish any information concerning the operation of his, quote, community. He did say the one who was buried was Brother Luke. I don't like this fucking guy already. Bishop Hyde advised he has never met David Ferrie in person. I highly doubt that. His first contact with Ferrie occurred within the past 2 years, probably about 1.5 years ago. On this occasion, Ferrie was in New Orleans and had been requested to contact the bishop by a person who was very ill in a hospital. Hyde was not sure if this contact was by telephone or letter. He stated following this initial contact, he has had frequent correspondence with Ferrie, both by mail and telephone. Approximately 6 months ago, after considerable discussion along religious lines, Ferrie asked the bishop to ordain him. Hyde claims he told Ferrie that since he had not met him in person, he had not been able to study him at first hand, he could not in full justice accede to this request. Hyde states that he told Ferrie that if he would come to Washington and enter the study, first for 6 months as a postulate, then for a year as a novitiate, I don't like that word, he would consider ordaining him. Hyde advised that Ferrie could not accede. What fucking word is that? ACCEDE, accede to these requirements, for his financial situation would not allow it. Their correspondence telephonically and by letter continued. Ferrie, in the early summer of 1963, again made his request to be ordained. Hyde stated he told Ferrie to send him a list of his educational attainments and he would forward them to the Archbishop at Kankakee, Illinois, and let the activity continue from there. When queried as to the form in which the attainments were received, Hyde was evasive. So Hyde's just making a bunch of bullshit up. At this point, he apparently, in the moment of laxity, called the subject Dr. Ferrie. When asked as to the basis of the doctorate and in what field, Hyde stated he was not sure of the basis, but he believed that it was an honorary degree. He finally admitted that most likely he had received a resume from David Ferrie and no transcripts. Hyde states that he made a cursory perusal of these items and forwarded them to Bishop McKenna in Kankakee, Illinois. Hyde claims that Bishop McKenna visited him at Washington, D.C. in the early part of '63. At that time, Hyde endeavored to convince McKenna in good interest of the church that he felt before anyone was ordained to the church, they should give an examination into the canon law of the church by all bishops in the church, since one bishop might ordain a person not really suitable to cloth and would be thus become a misfit and a detriment to the church if they were to go to some other area. Hyde state that he told Ferrie that he felt this would be to Ferrie's best interest in case of his requesting to be ordained. In the case of his requesting to be ordained, Hyde claims McKenna seemed to begin to accept the idea. Hyde stated he is aware that Ferrie was not ordained July 19th, 1963, and he advised Ferrie not to go to Kankakee. At this point, in order to more properly evaluate the comments of Hyde, it is necessary to set out information obtained from Hyde concerning one Jack Martin. Hence the letters we reviewed already. During the course of this interview, Mr. Hyde, he was asked how the name Jack Martin was associated with he and Ferrie. Hyde stated he believed that he had first come in contact with Jack Martin some years ago in New York City, not named. He described Martin as an outright rounder, living by fraud, blackmail, and other devious means. Martin learned that Hyde needed a seal and provided him with one. See, these guys are all in on a fucking... All right, so he's lying. He was tight with Jack Martin. It says Martin learned that Hyde needed a seal and provided him with one. Okay, so these guys are involved in a fake fucking church scheme. That's what they were doing. And the CIA was backing it because the CIA was getting these people to launder money. That's what this was. Anytime you see church involved with anything CIA related, it's to fucking get tax-free money laundering. Nothing more. Martin requested Hyde to ordain him as a priest, which Hyde refused. Martin became associated with a branch of the church at Louisville, Kentucky, considered frauds by Hyde, and later became manner unknown associated with Ferrie. There was some indication Ferrie also spent some time living in Louisville. Ferrie began to question the church authority of Martin, and Martin then advised the head of the church at Louisville. Supposedly, Ferrie was read out of the church, and vicious comments made about him which were attributable to Martin. Hyde claims that Martin has made allegations as to homosexuality concerning various officials of the church, including himself. Martin reportedly has written letters to various persons alleging misdeeds of Hyde, including the molesting of children. You don't say. Claiming he had proof because of publicity in Washington newspapers. Hyde states that Martin is the kind of person who will write to persons like Richard Cardinal Cushing praising him for public stand he has taken. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up because we've pretty much covered everything relevant to this. So, in summary, David Ferrie was a fucking pedophile. David Ferrie was using the Civil Air Patrol and all the teens that he was bringing into it. He was hypnotizing them, and then he was using them for sexual molestation purposes. He was then connecting them via his planes in the Civil Air Patrol flying around the country to George Hyde and this McKenna guy in Louisville. And so, yeah, David Ferrie was part of this fucking child trafficking ring going back to at least 1961. And everybody fucking knew about it. Everybody knew it. It seems like Eastern Airlines knew about it. It seems like Jim Garrison knew about it. All right, more stuff on Eastern Airlines. What do we have here? From Martin Waldron, New York Times, room 729, Chronicle Building, Houston. This looks like some notes, miscellaneous notes. Dated November 21st, 1966. Ferrie, written in the upper right-hand corner. Lieutenant Marvin Leonard, New Orleans Police Department. Dear Lieutenant Leonard, in accordance with our conversation as of today, I'm herewith submitting the following questions. Why did the New Orleans Police Department arrest David Ferrie in November 1963 in connection with an investigation into Lee Harvey Oswald? 2. Was there any indication that Mr. Ferrie had any connection with Oswald during 1963 or during the 1950s when Oswald was a student in junior high school and in high school in New Orleans? 3. Why did Lieutenant Paul Dwyer and Sergeant Frederick S.P. O'Sullivan have a suspicion that Mr. Ferrie may have flown Oswald to Dallas, as reported by Sergeant O'Sullivan in his testimony before the President's commission to investigate the assassination of President Kennedy? Quote, we wanted to check at Ferrie's plane to see if it was flyable, to see if possible whether he had been flying it lately, with the thought that he may have transported Oswald to Dallas. 4. Did the New Orleans Police Department and Vice Squad know or have reports that Mr. Ferrie and Oswald had been associating together just prior to this? And these are questions from Lamar Waldron. 5. Where was Ferrie on the day President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas? Well, he was definitely in Dallas, and he was definitely on the grassy knoll. 6. Does Mr. Ferrie have a police record for, or is he known as a sex deviant? If so, what kind? 7. Did Lee Harvey Oswald have a record of, or was he purported to be a sex deviant? If so, what kind? 8. Mr. Ferrie was arrested November 63, shortly after President Kennedy's assassination, and booked at 1st District Station. What was he charged with? Who arrested him, and did he make a statement? 9. While Mr. Ferrie was in custody, did agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation interrogate him? If so, what did Mr. Ferrie tell the agents? 10. Does Civil Air Patrol records indicate that Oswald was a member of the CAP in a squadron which Mr. Ferrie headed? I have to assume this is before the photograph leaked out. So these are some prescient questions. 11. How old is David Ferrie and where was he born? How long has he been known to the New Orleans police? 12. Do New Orleans police officials have any reason to believe that Mr. Ferrie may have been instrumental in suggesting or urging Oswald to commit violence? In particular, the Kennedy assassination. If so, please explain. Jesus Christ, how many questions are you going to let this guy ask? All right, so he goes on to ask more questions about Carlos Marcello. What the fuck is the date on this thing? What is the date on this letter? Nope. November 21st, 66. Man. So, just from the questions that are being asked by Lamar Waldron, by 66, you get a pretty good idea that, like, people knew what time it was, right? People knew about Marcello. They knew about the connection between Ferrie and Oswald. All right. So now we're back to more of the Eric Crochet stuff. I'm not going over any more of that because we've done enough background development on him. What is this? State Department documents. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it here for now. And I'm going to pick up later on today When we pick up again later, what I want to do is I'm going to pick up with David Ferrie's trip to Galveston, and we're going to go into extreme detail on what David Ferrie did after he shot the president, after he shot Tippit, and after he heads to Hammond, Louisiana. And so I will check in later on this evening. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.